For 37 years, it remained untouched, sealed behind reinforced steel, its location whispered about but never confirmed. Princess Diana's private safe was said to contain her deepest secrets: unsent letters, forbidden heirlooms, and a final act of defiance against the crown. But why has no one dared to open it, even now, decades after her death? What's in there that could still terrify the monarchy? The story begins not with Diana's death, but with her awakening. By 1989, the fairy tale had collapsed into something colder, sharper, and far more dangerous. Diana had learned, slowly and painfully, that privacy inside the monarchy was an illusion, and that even grief could be managed, curated, and quietly redirected. It was during this period that the safe entered the story, a solid, unremarkable object that would become her last line of control. Insiders would later whisper that it was installed without ceremony, without announcement, and without the usual palace protocols. No inventory, no witnesses, just silence. Almost immediately, the rules changed. Staff were warned away. Security logs were altered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when the subject arose. There were murmurs, never written, never confirmed, that instructions had come from higher up to preserve whatever Diana had chosen to lock away. Preserve did not mean protect for her benefit. It meant freeze in time. It meant no one touches this, no matter what happens next. Speculation filled the vacuum. Some claimed the safe held royal jewels never recorded in official ledgers, pieces loaned, promised, then quietly reclaimed. Others believed it contained objects Diana refused to surrender during the unraveling of her marriage, items deemed too sensitive to acknowledge and too symbolic to retrieve. Among former aides, a different phrase circulated in hushed tones: the untouchables, things the crown could not admit existed and could not risk being seen taking back. But the safe was not just about objects. It was emotional architecture. By the end of the 1980s, Diana understood something fundamental. Power was not just inherited. It was hidden. Every betrayal sharpened her resolve. Every dismissal taught her that truth, if left unguarded, would be rewritten. The safe became her countermeasure, a place where she could decide what survived her and what did not. There is one detail that refuses to fade, no matter how hard the palace tried to bury it. A letter, handwritten, never delivered, addressed to no one by name. Former confidants insist it was marked with a single instruction, written not in panic, but in clarity, only to be opened in case of total collapse. Collapse of what was never specified. The marriage? The monarchy? Or the illusion that had protected it all? Those who knew Diana best say the safe was not an act of fear, but of defiance. A quiet declaration that some truths would not be taken from her, catalogued, or erased. And that decision, made in isolation, under pressure, and with full awareness of the consequences, set everything else into motion. But to understand why this safe remains locked after nearly 4 decades, we must go back to the moment Diana decided some truths were too dangerous to share, even with her sons. Not all secrets are written in ink. Some are sealed with blood. In 1989, Diana reportedly made a private pact with 2 confidants, neither royal, both untraceable. Their task? Protect her personal safe from everyone, including the royal family. But what made Diana so desperate to protect what lay inside? By the end of the 1980s, Diana no longer believed in protection from within. The walls of the palace no longer felt like sanctuary. They felt like surveillance. What had once been whispers became certainty. Her phone calls intercepted, her rooms searched under the guise of routine checks, and her staff, hand-picked, loyal, suddenly reassigned or dismissed without explanation. The illusion of autonomy shattered. She was, in every sense, surrounded. And in that growing darkness, Diana acted. Not with public rebellion, but with quiet, methodical precision. She began cutting ties with royal protocol and forging her own safeguards. That's when, according to those closest to her, she reached out to two individuals entirely outside the royal ecosystem. One, a discreet legal advisor, the other someone from the private security sector, long since vanished from public record. Their identities remain protected, their role shrouded. But together, they became the only people who knew the safe's exact location, combination, and legal terms of access. They were never part of her inner court, never seen at royal events. They were, as one source described, ghosts in her armor. But why such secrecy? It was what Diana discovered about the crown jewels that changed everything. A set of heirlooms, pieces she was told would be hers upon marrying the future king, were never passed to her. Not loaned, not worn, simply withheld. When she questioned their whereabouts, she was met with cold dismissals, cryptic explanations, and, most tellingly, silence from those who once promised her everything. That silence became betrayal, not just of her marriage, but of her role as the future queen. Her belief that the monarchy would eventually embrace her was gone. What remained was resolve. From this wound, the safe was born, a quiet rebellion, locked in steel. More disturbing still were rumors of a legal document Diana allegedly signed in 1991, a sworn affidavit stipulating that the contents of the safe could not be accessed until the death of a specific royal family member. The name is redacted in every retelling, but whispers point in one clear direction. Whether out of fear, strategy, or prophecy, Diana ensured that her secrets would not fall into the wrong hands too soon. And then, the voice recording. Never aired, never authenticated, but always whispered about in the circles that knew how to listen. A tape, reportedly made by Diana herself, stating in cold clarity, "They'll erase me, but not what I've hidden." Those 7 words echoed among her closest allies. They weren't hysterical. They weren't paranoid. They were calculated. Diana was building a legacy beneath the legacy, one that would not be redacted, rewritten, or conveniently forgotten. Even within the palace, this tension could not be ignored. Staff loyal to Diana found themselves increasingly in conflict with official security teams, clashing over access, protocol, and information control. There were standoffs, never public, but deeply felt. People quit. People were removed. The safe was never spoken of, yet its shadow loomed over every corridor she walked through. It became the unspeakable artifact of a woman learning how to survive behind enemy lines. If Diana was building a fortress of truth, then it wasn't just to protect herself, but to protect what had been taken from her. There are jewels that sparkle under palace lights, and there are those banished to shadows. Several pieces once promised to Diana were never delivered, allegedly hidden in the vaults, reassigned to other royals. But what if Diana had taken matters into her own hands? And what if she never returned them? From the moment Diana became Princess of Wales, she was told she was entering a world of legacy, where tradition meant protection, and jewels were more than adornments. They were symbols of inclusion, trust, and status. The royal vaults, glittering with century-old treasures, were supposed to open to her gradually, as she stepped further into her role. But they didn't. What began with subtle delays soon became silence. One piece after another, a brooch once worn by Queen Mary, a sapphire bracelet rumored to have belonged to Queen Alexandra, an emerald choker never seen again after 1986, all slipped into obscurity. These weren't simple oversights. These were calculated omissions. Diana's requests went unanswered, her questions deflected. And slowly, she understood. She wasn't just being denied jewels, she was being denied her place. Behind the grandeur of monarchy lies a brutal reality. Jewels are power, and access to them is tightly controlled. While the world watched her become the most photographed woman on earth, within the palace walls, something darker played out. A quiet erasure. It was not just the loss of heirlooms, it was the erosion of entitlement. The jewels she was promised as a bride were being withheld. And then, according to palace whispers, something remarkable happened. Diana stopped waiting. Before her separation from Prince Charles, insiders claim she began discreetly removing items she had been loaned but never formally returned. Not stolen, reclaimed, a silent rebellion against a system that sought to clip her wings and decorate others in her place. At the heart of this tension lies an unspoken war, one that has haunted royal protocol for generations. Who truly owns the jewels? Are they crown property, held in trust for reigning monarchs and their consorts? Or do they, once gifted or loaned, belong to the individual who wears them in service of the throne? That question was never answered, because the moment Diana placed those pieces into her private safe, she created her own definition of inheritance. She drew a line between what the crown allowed her to have and what she refused to give back. The most painful moment came later. After her separation, Diana discovered that some of the very jewels she'd asked for years earlier had been quietly reassigned. Not just stored away, not just forgotten, but sent elsewhere. One in particular, a diamond-set brooch from the Queen Mother's collection, was allegedly prepared for Camilla's use long before their relationship was publicly acknowledged. It was never worn, but the message was clear. Diana saw it, and she never forgave it. What lived inside that safe then was more than stone and metal. It was fury, grief, betrayal, locked behind steel. Each piece stored away not just because it was beautiful, but because it was stolen from her in plain sight. The safe became a private tomb of resentment, a museum of what she had been denied. Every jewel told a story, not of royalty, but of robbery, dressed in ceremony. She had not taken what wasn't hers. She had simply held on to what they tried to erase. And that is why no one has opened the safe, because to do so would be to reveal the quiet war she fought, alone, against the very institution that crowned her. It would show the world how much was taken, how much was hidden, and how carefully the truth was buried beneath diamonds. But jewelry wasn't the only thing locked away. Some say the real danger wasn't diamonds, but documents. What if Diana left behind not just letters, but accusations? Hidden among the jewels were reportedly handwritten messages, addressed to the Queen, to Charles, and to someone only referred to as M. For years, rumors have circulated that these letters could destroy reputations and unravel royal alliances. As the safe filled with objects the crown pretended didn't exist, it also became the resting place for words Diana never dared to send. She wrote late at night, long after the palace had gone quiet, when the performance ended and the loneliness crept in. Friends later described her handwriting as restless during those years, tight in places, sprawling in others, as if her thoughts were racing ahead of her pen. These were not polite notes or ceremonial reflections. They were raw, unfiltered, and deeply personal. She wrote because she had no other place to put the truth. Among the papers, insiders claim, were letters addressed directly to the most powerful figures in her life. Not appeals, not apologies, confrontations. One, allegedly marked private and final, is said to list names, individuals Diana believed had actively worked to isolate her, discredit her, and shape the narrative of her marriage behind closed doors. This was not paranoia written in panic. This was a woman documenting patterns, conversations, and betrayals with chilling clarity. She had learned the hard way that memory could be challenged. Ink could not. There were also theories, never proven but never dismissed, of an emergency release plan. A contingency Diana prepared in case something happened to her. Instructions that certain letters were to be made public under specific circumstances. Her death, her disappearance, or what she allegedly called total erasure. The plan was never activated. Or if it was intercepted before it could breathe. That unanswered question lingers, heavy and unresolved, because Diana was meticulous when she feared for her future. The emotional core of these writings is what makes them dangerous. They do not read like a public figure crafting a legacy. They read like a woman breaking apart in real time. Confessions of isolation, fear of being trapped, a recurring sense that she was surrounded by people who smiled for cameras and whispered after doors closed. She wrote about not being believed, about knowing too much and being powerless to stop what she saw unfolding. These were not diary entries meant for sympathy. They were warnings, wrapped in grief. Most explosive of all are the passages that allegedly reference conversations she was never supposed to know about. Quiet discussions between Charles and members of the foreign press. Strategic leaks. Coordinated narratives designed to reposition blame and rehabilitate reputations. Hers sacrificed in the process. Diana, according to sources, named dates. She named intermediaries. She named the cost. If true, these letters would not merely embarrass the monarchy. They would expose how controlled the story always was. Some letters go further still, hinting at financial arrangements and favors exchanged in silence. Not explicit accusations, but enough to raise questions the institution has spent decades avoiding. Enough to threaten the fragile agreement between power and perception that keeps the monarchy intact. That is why these letters matter more than the jewels. Jewels can be reclaimed. Words cannot. The safe, then, was never just a container. It was a dead man's switch that never flipped. A truth archive waiting for a moment that never came. And perhaps that was the point. Diana didn't need the letters to be read. She needed them to exist. Proof that she saw clearly, even when no one listened. But the monarchy didn't just want the safe locked. They wanted the very idea of it erased. That's when the cover-up began. A safe doesn't remain sealed for 37 years without help and pressure. Reports point to a shadowy inner circle operating under orders from the highest levels of the palace. Their mission? Ensure Diana's secrets never see daylight. But cracks have formed. And one name keeps resurfacing. What Diana locked away didn't just threaten reputations, it threatened the system. And when systems are threatened, they don't rely on tradition. They rely on silence, strategy, and those who enforce both. Behind the gates of royal estates and beneath the layers of ceremony, a web of fixers quietly pulled strings. These were not household staff. These were legal architects, estate managers, intelligence-linked operatives, and trusted intermediaries. Individuals with one purpose: control the narrative, bury the evidence, and neutralize the fallout before it reached daylight. This wasn't paranoia, it was machinery. And at the center of it was something reportedly labeled Operation Hallows. Mentioned only once in a classified briefing now wiped from archival indexes, This initiative was never meant to exist on paper. Its directive? Ensure no unauthorized material from Diana's personal holdings, especially her safe, was ever accessed or disclosed. This meant monitoring those who knew of its location, tracking attempts to recover its contents, and, if necessary, eliminating potential leaks. No scandal, no press, just silence. It worked, until it didn't. In 2002, rumors began to swirl about a break-in attempt on an estate long linked to Diana's private holdings. Official reports were vague. Vandalism, perhaps a burglary. But off-record, security teams acknowledged something far stranger. The intruders left nothing behind. No fingerprints, no forced entry, just an open cabinet, empty. Some believe they reached the safe. Others believe they never found it. What's clear is this. Less than 48 hours later, the estate was swept clean, the staff dismissed, and all surveillance footage erased. Then there was Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler. For years, he was loyal, quiet. Then he wasn't. In interviews, he began dropping cryptic remarks. "There are things I was never supposed to know," he once said. "Things I wish I didn't." But just as his revelations began to stir interest, he stopped. No more interviews, no more hints. Those closest to him say he was visited. Not threatened, advised. A quiet reminder that some truths come with prices. And some vaults, once opened, can never be closed again. And then came the disappearance. A mid-level royal aide, curious, ambitious, and according to leaked correspondence, obsessed with the rumors surrounding Diana's safe. He made inquiries. Too many. Asked the wrong person a seemingly innocent question. Was it real? Weeks later, he was gone. Resigned, they said. Left the country, they claimed. But friends say his flat was cleared overnight. No warning, no forwarding address, as if he'd never existed. The Royal Archives followed suit. In 2007, a quiet reclassification swept through Diana-related documents. Files previously accessible to trusted researchers were now sealed indefinitely. No announcement. Just vanished listings marked sensitive under new legal provisions. Why? No explanation was given. But former archivists hint that the files were connected to unauthorized correspondences, a term they'd never seen before or since. Every institution has its ghosts. And in this story, the ghosts do not rattle chains. They carry briefcases, sign documents under sealed orders, and make sure certain questions are never asked twice. But even the tightest net cannot catch every thread. One name, buried in documents, whispered in corridors, keeps resurfacing. A name not of a royal, but of someone once trusted by Diana, now missing from official records. And wherever that name appears, the safe's story seems to grow darker. Yet, despite the effort to bury the truth, the story didn't end. Because someone else found the safe, and they've been keeping a secret of their own. In 2021, Prince William reportedly visited a secluded estate tied to his mother's private holdings. Cameras were banned, records sealed, and staff replaced. The rumor? He found the safe. But he didn't open it. Why not? And what did he say afterward that sent his aides into a panic? The visit wasn't announced. There was no press, no motorcade, no public-facing schedule. It began as a private excursion to a countryside property long believed to house items from Diana's personal collection. But insiders claim that something about this visit was different. The estate's usual caretakers were quietly replaced a week prior. Security presence was tripled. And for 2 full hours, Prince William was reportedly alone, unaccompanied, unmonitored, inside a secured room known only to a handful of individuals in the royal household. What he saw inside remains a mystery, but what followed has ignited whispers ever since. Staff described William emerging pale, silent, and visibly shaken. His composure, typically unshakable, was fractured. He didn't speak for several minutes. When he finally did, it wasn't an order. It wasn't a royal command. It was a whisper. One aide, speaking only under anonymity, claims he said, "She knew more than any of us realized." That line, short, devastating, hung in the air long after he left the room. Reports differ on what, exactly, William discovered. Some insist he merely confirmed the safe's existence, its placement and weight validating years of rumors. Others say he saw it, touched it, that he held a key in his hand, and chose not to use it. That moment, if true, reveals something extraordinary, not just about the safe, but about William himself. He didn't open it. That decision sent a ripple of confusion and fear through the few who had been briefed. Why come so close, only to walk away? Why grant himself access, then deny it? The speculation is as loud as the silence. Some believe he feared what he might find, letters he wasn't ready to read, accusations that could fracture what remains of royal unity. Others say it was a moment of reverence, that for the first time, the future king wasn't acting as a sovereign in waiting, but as a son staring at the last unspoken chapter of his mother's life, too afraid that the truth would demand more than he could give. What he did do, according to insiders, was issue one clear instruction. The safe must remain untouched. For now. He didn't elaborate. He didn't justify. He simply said it must wait. But waiting is not without cost. The emotional weight of that decision is now his to bear. The monarchy survives on myth, on polished truths carefully presented to a watching world. But behind closed doors, William now holds the burden of knowledge, some of it confirmed, some still locked away. The question that haunts his inner circle is the one no one dares to ask aloud. How much truth can a future king withstand before the past threatens to unmake him? Because once the contents of the safe are revealed, the crown cannot control the story. And maybe, just maybe, that's the fear that stopped him. But if William chose restraint, others did not. Because not everyone agreed the safe should stay closed. She's not a royal. She never claimed to be. But for years, she's fought to have the safe unsealed, claiming Diana entrusted her with a right to reveal the truth, when the time was right. And now, as the monarchy faces new pressures, that time may have come. Her name is rarely spoken aloud within royal circles, but those who know the story call her the Witness, a quiet figure from Diana's past, not a courtier or staff member, but someone far more dangerous to the institution. A woman who saw Diana when she wasn't wearing a mask. A former confidant from the princess's private therapy group, she sat across from Diana in the moments when the cameras were off, when the titles fell away, and the wounds were wide open. For years, she said nothing. She kept her promise to stay in the background. But now, she's stepping forward. And she's not asking for permission. According to documents shared with select legal counsel, this woman claims to hold a notarized agreement, handwritten and signed by Diana, granting her what's being called posthumous release authority, a chilling term for a chilling task. The agreement, if real, stipulates that when the institution refused to speak the truth, someone else would. And she was chosen. The document references contents sealed for personal protection and intentions to be fulfilled only when the climate permits acknowledgement without retaliation. In plain English, Diana expected resistance, and prepared for war. The war came, quietly, of course. Her first attempt to gain legal access was filed in 2014. It was dismissed before reaching a hearing. The second was in 2017, this time met with subtle interference, delays, procedural reversals, and inexplicable retractions by firms that had initially agreed to support her. In 2020, she went public. "This isn't about revenge," she said during an interview that quickly vanished from syndication. "It's about closure, for Diana and for history." But since that moment, things have shifted. She claims her phone has been tapped, her emails rerouted. Legal advisors pulled out without explanation. One anonymous source even alleged she was trailed, leaving a London cafe by two men who never approached, but were waiting for her again, an hour later, on the opposite side of town. Still, she refuses to stop. The more the palace stays silent, the louder the public grows. A digital movement now burns through social media under a single phrase: "Kya unlock Diana." What began as a hashtag has become a campaign. Influencers, former staffers, and even disillusioned royalists have joined, demanding transparency. The narrative is shifting. The monarchy, long protected by its ability to withhold, is now being pulled into a reckoning it cannot control. And yet, there's irony in all of it, because the woman fighting for the truth has never actually seen the contents of the safe. She doesn't know what's inside. She doesn't know what she's risking everything to release. She only knows she was chosen to speak if Diana could not. But even she doesn't know the final twist. Because something else may be hidden inside. Something Diana never meant anyone to find. It was meant to be destroyed, but it wasn't. Hidden inside a velvet pouch among the letters, a small cassette, unmarked, anonymous, allegedly contains Diana's final words. One last truth, recorded in 1996, never meant to be heard by the world. But if it exists, it changes everything. The rumor of the tape has haunted those closest to the safe for years, dismissed publicly and feared privately. But after Prince William's visit, that rumor hardened into something far more dangerous: confirmation. A source close to him later claimed that among the contents he was briefed on, never shown to outsiders, was a cassette marked in Diana's unmistakable handwriting. No title, no date, just a single initial. As if she knew that naming it would give it too much power. What makes the tape so destabilizing is not just its existence, but its intention. This was not a polished message, not a farewell crafted for history. It was allegedly recorded late at night, when Diana believed she was alone, when performance gave way to truth. Those who claim knowledge of it say her voice is raw, unguarded, stripped of royal cadence. This was not the Princess of Wales speaking to the public. This was Diana speaking to the future, if it ever caught up. The most chilling possibility is what she may have said. Insiders suggest the recording contains names, not vague references, not insinuations, names spoken clearly, deliberately, tied to moments of betrayal she believed were buried forever, conversations she overheard, deals she was never meant to know about, alliances formed behind her back while she smiled in front of the world. If true, the tape doesn't just tell a story. It rewrites one. And that is where the agony deepens. Because listening to it is not the same as releasing it. Those who argue against disclosure say playing the tape would violate Diana's last boundary, exposing her most vulnerable moments to a public that already consumed her pain. Others argue the opposite, that silencing her voice yet again is the ultimate betrayal, that Diana recorded it because she feared being erased, because she knew words spoken aloud, even once, could outlive lies written by others. The question of ownership makes everything more volatile. Who owns a voice after death? Is it the family? The institution she served? Or the woman herself, who recorded it knowing she might never get another chance? Legal experts quietly admit there is no clear answer. The tape exists in a gray zone, morally explosive, legally untouchable. And that ambiguity may be its greatest protection. What the monarchy fears most is not scandal. It has survived scandal. What it fears is rupture, the collapse of the carefully curated narrative that has kept the crown intact for generations. A single recording, Diana's voice, steady and certain, could undo decades of controlled silence. It could confirm what many have long suspected, that the truth was never lost. It was locked away. And now, the safe stands at the center of a storm it was designed to outlast. Jewels, letters, documents, and a voice that refuses to stay buried. Each day it remains closed. The tension grows heavier. Because some secrets decay in darkness, others grow louder. And as this long-locked safe continues to defy the silence, the world asks one final question. In an age of truth, transparency, and reckoning, what does the monarchy fear more? What's inside the safe, or what the safe symbolizes? For 37 years, it's represented Diana's final resistance. If it opens, the past and present collide. And the royal family may never recover. The British monarchy has endured scandal, protest, and generational rifts, but it has survived through one tool more powerful than the crown itself: control. Carefully managed images, sanctioned narratives, and the unspoken rule that some truths must never be touched. Diana was the first to shatter that illusion from within. But even she knew the full truth was too dangerous to be spoken in her lifetime. That's why she didn't destroy the safe. She preserved it, as a time bomb set for a future that couldn't ignore it. For decades, the institution has relied on memory to fade, and mystery to rot into myth. But the safe doesn't fade. It doesn't rot. It waits. A sealed chamber of resistance. A symbol of everything Diana was denied, and everything she refused to surrender. The letters, the jewels, the accusations, the tape. Each piece inside isn't just evidence, it's emotional justice. A record of how far a woman was pushed behind palace walls, and how far she pushed back. The public watches with growing hunger. This is no longer just royal intrigue, it's reckoning. The younger generation, disconnected from the reverence of crowns and curtsies, sees the safe not as betrayal, but as exposure. They want the story behind the story. And the longer the silence stretches, the more the pressure builds. Meanwhile, inside the palace, fear simmers. Because once opened, the safe is irreversible. There's no spin strategy that can shield them from its contents. No press release that can unwrite what Diana wrote in solitude. And then there's her legacy. For years, Diana was memorialized as the tragic princess, the victim of a failed fairy tale. But the safe rewrites that. It reframes her not as a broken woman, but a strategist, a silent rebel who turned her suffering into documentation, into proof, into power. That transformation doesn't just elevate her, it indicts everything that tried to silence her. And what of William and Harry? What will it mean for them to inherit not just her memory, but her secrets? For William, the future king, it threatens to blur the line between duty and truth. For Harry, estranged and outspoken, it could be vindication and ignition. And for the monarchy itself, the safe is no longer an object. It's a crossroads. The final question still looms, unspoken but deafening. Will the safe ever be opened? Or will its key vanish with someone who chooses silence over collapse? Because some legacies aren't sealed in gold, but in silence. And the silence is breaking.